Now in the room. Hi, Peter. How are you? Good. So, Peter, on behalf of the Republican Town Committee, welcome. Thank you. We're happy to have you here. For those that were at last month's, John, bless you, by the way. Hey, John, pleasure. For those that were here, I guess just about a month ago now, we had two of the three candidates that are running for the U.S. Senate on the Republican side of the fence here to speak to us. As promised, Peter's joining us tonight, and so I will turn the floor over to Peter. Peter, welcome. It's nice to have you.
Okay, great. Am I under any time constraints? Or?
You got 5 minutes. No, no, Peter, you're good. You're
okay.
Good.
All right, great. Anyway, well, sorry I'm late. I just had to rush here from. This is actually one of the first times I've had two of these meetings at the same time. So I guess I'm glad though because it's a little more efficient. But anyway, so I'm running as for the Senate. And a lot of people, they ask me, firstly, why are you running, and what's the point? I mean, you got a decent job, and why do you want the aggravation of a Senate campaign? Why do you want to take a pay cut and go to Washington? And the truth of the matter is, I have been devoting much of my business career to trying to protect myself from all the foolish things that Washington does, and to protect my clients. I've actually grown a business now around trying to protect ourselves from Washington. Because Washington has been pursuing very destructive policies, certainly for the last 10 years, that have undermined our economy and destroyed the value of our money and threatened to completely destroy the value of our money if they continue on this course. And rather than simply remaining as an outsider and as a critic of Washington, I think it would be a better use of my time, and I would feel better if I could actually go to Washington and actually put a stop to these destructive policies. Before they completely finish the job, which I think we are very close to doing. Now, all the people in Washington now who are telling us that the economy is getting better, that the things that they have done have fixed it, these are the same geniuses that told us everything was great in the economy right up until the moment it fell off the edge of a cliff. And the reason they think it's getting better now, and the reason they thought it was good in 2007 or 2008, is because they don't understand anything about economics. They don't understand, they're confusing the symptoms with the disease. They don't understand that when they thought the economy was good between 2002 and 2008, that was the problem. We were living in a phony mania. We were enjoying a false prosperity because all we were doing is spending borrowed money. We went on a huge spending spree for those years, buying trillions of dollars worth of stuff that we couldn't afford, that we didn't make, and borrowing money from the rest of the world to buy it. And we went on a speculative frenzy with real estate. But none of that was real economic growth. All we did was spend money. But we accumulated all this debt. So we were actually undermining our economy while everybody said that it was expanding. And that whole period of time was a direct result of the federal government. It was the policies of Alan Greenspan and the Federal Reserve and Congress and George Bush that inflated that bubble. Because when the NASDAQ bubble burst in 2000, rather than letting the free market work, which it should have done, and allowing a more painful recession to run its course, which would have happened had the government not stimulated, we never would have had a housing bubble. We wouldn't have had the financial crisis of 2008. That was because no one in Washington was willing to level with the American public. Nobody wanted to risk not getting reelected. So everybody did what was politically expedient, which was to inflate a housing bubble, slash interest rates, run up deficits, and postpone the pain. And they did postpone the pain. But in doing it, they exacerbated it. So now the pain is far more excruciating because we didn't bite the bullet at the time. And unfortunately, our leaders are making the same mistakes. The Congress today and Ben Bernanke were doing exactly what we did 6 years ago. Instead of allowing the recession to run its course, which of course is necessary because of all the damage that we did to the economy during that phony boom, it's the booms, the inflationary booms that governments create, that's where the problems occur. That's where the mistakes are made. It's during the recession that we repair the damage. We fix the mistakes and we prepare the economy for a real recovery. But the politicians don't have the stomach for that. So they want to act like they can do something about it. So they shoot us up with more of that stimulus, which is what we've done. Right? It's like a heroin addict. He goes into rehab, and instead of letting him go cold turkey, they just give him more heroin so he doesn't have to experience withdrawal. But that doesn't help the patient. It actually makes the situation worse. And that's what we've done with the stimulus. Now we've got interest rates at zero. monetary policy is far more reckless today than it was under Greenspan. And of course, the deficit spending is off the charts. I mean, the government now is going to spend deficit for the next fiscal year is $1.5 trillion. I mean, that is enormous. And the national debt, they just had to raise the debt ceiling by $2 trillion, and we're going to hit the ceiling again in a year. And the national debt is going to grow from $12 trillion to $14 trillion. But meantime, the government has taken all that Fannie and Freddie debt and brought it on its books, although it doesn't officially account for it. The government has guaranteed all that debt. They've said publicly that if you own bonds guaranteed by Freddie and Fannie, that's equivalent to a U.S. Treasury. You have the same protection. So that's another $6 trillion in debt. So you add that to the 12, it's like $18 trillion. Our GDP is what, 12 or 13 trillion. So our debt is way in excess of it in our GDP. We're already in the same situation as Greece, only we haven't figured it out yet, or our creditors haven't. Meanwhile, we've got tremendous unfunded liabilities that are still on the books, but the government doesn't look at them. We have unfunded liabilities of over $50 trillion in things like Social Security, Medicare. And even worse, what the government has done, they have so expanded government expenditures to so supposedly fight off this recession. The federal government is now twice the size that it was 10 years ago. Twice. The government is spending twice as much as it did in the year 2000. And, I remember the year 2000. I remember thinking that the government was too big. Probably a lot of people in this room thought the government was too big in the year 2000. It's now twice the size. And most Americans earn less. Certainly adjusted for inflation, but a lot of them actually earn less. Some Americans don't earn anything because they're unemployed than they did 10 years ago. The stock market is actually lower than it was 10 years ago. How can the government be double the size? How can we possibly afford a government that expensive? We can't. That's why the economy is so weak, because the government is crushing it. It's crushing the life out of it. It is taking all of our resources, all the resources that we need to grow an economy, and it's taking it away. When a businessman needs to borrow money, there's nothing there because the government borrowed it all. And what the government didn't borrow, it guaranteed somebody else's debt. All the capital is being funneled away from Main Street to Wall Street, to the government. It's being used to subsidize all sorts of other government activity, or mortgages or student loans. There's nothing available to grow the economy. So we're going to continue to contract the real economy as long as government keeps growing. And the politicians are telling us that we need to grow the government to fight off the recession. But the recession is being created because the government is getting bigger. And the bigger they make it, the weaker the economy gets. And they want to pretend that, we're going to deal with these deficits in the future. We just need to increase the debt now, and then we'll be able to pay off the debt later when the economy is stronger. But it's not going to be strong. If you want to lose weight, you don't put on 200 pounds first and then try to lose weight. You go on a diet right now. That's what we have to do on a national level, federal level. The government has to cut spending. They can't increase it. That's the only way to stimulate the economy, is to shrink the government. The government is suffocating the economy. The stimulus is actually a sedative, right? So we have to reduce government spending. But it's not just governments that have to spend less. It's American citizens that have to spend less. And that's part of the problem with the stimulus. What they're trying to do is get Americans to go shopping. They want us to go back to the malls and buy more stuff. Put more stuff on credit cards, buy more cars. That is why the economy is in so much trouble. Because of all the cheap money coming out of the Federal Reserve, Americans bought all sorts of things that they really couldn't afford. And they bought them on credit. We have to stop doing that. The only way that we're going to revive our economy is through savings, through investment, through production, through hard work. Which means we can't spend money. You can't spend and save money simultaneously. You have to not spend to save. The government has to do the same thing. The government has to shrink. The government has to lay off federal employees. It has to cut federal salaries. I just found recently that the average federal worker, when you count their benefits, is earning twice what the average person in the private sector makes. We can't afford to pay our federal employees twice what we earn ourselves. They need to have a pay cut. And we need to contract government dramatically. There are a lot of departments that we need to abolish. We just simply can't afford them. But besides, they're useless. They're not doing anything. I've used the example of the Department of Energy. It's just one department. There are a whole bunch we can get rid of. But we started the Department of Energy in 1979. We started it under Jimmy Carter. So, if you thought Jimmy Carter was a good president, then maybe, you liked the